Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to continue talking about our featured novel for the month of May, The Seventh Wish. And, of course, we summarized the plot for you in our last couple of programs. It didn't really have a happy ending because Abby is still kind of in trouble with heroin. She might go back on it. She might stay away from it in the future. So the ending didn't really wrap things up for us 100%, but I guess that's the case with a lot of addictions. You just never know if somebody's going to go back to the drug or not.
Yeah, with drug addictions, you're fighting forever. You can never take that for granted, that you've recovered fully. It's one day at a time, and you're trying to be, you're trying to stay on the wagon. Tom used that phrase, to fall off the wagon means you once again have the problem that you were thought you had recovered from. When I went home this last time, there was a sad story about a guy who had been addicted to heroin and had gotten over it. He'd recovered for 6 years. He got married, had a great job in aeronautics. He was working on planes. And he had just had a brand new baby. He ran into the wrong person.
Oh, no.
And the next day he was gone. He was dead. So it's very easy to have these problems where they go back to their old friends, or they run into someone who entices them or convinces them that they just need to have one more hit, one more good time with that particular drug. But nowadays, Tom, because of fentanyl, which is a very serious, strong drug, that kills you almost immediately, even a little tiny bit. You can't just go on these trips, these drug trips they take, and think you're going to be okay. One bad dose and you're gone.
Indeed, so you got to be careful and don't get addicted to things. I can't imagine you ever being addicted to anything. Maybe you're addicted to life or something like that.
I'm addicted to shopping.
Okay, or addicted to chocolate or whatever. I used to smoke many years ago, but I don't think I was addicted to, well, I was, but after I quit smoking, I never really thought that I would start smoking again. Cigarettes are different. Heroin and fentanyl and things like that are very difficult to stay off of for your whole life. So that's kind of what this is all about. So we're going to talk about some of the themes and ideas in our featured work of literature for this month. Let's get to it. Let's listen to our article now, read one time. Kate Messner's novel, The Seventh Wish, offers a profound exploration of the challenges of addiction and the complexities of dependency. Drawing from her years as a middle school English teacher, Messner presents complex themes with clarity and empathy. After transitioning to a full-time author, she continues to earn praise for engaging young readers with thought-provoking stories. The Seventh Wish primarily explores the issue of drug use among teenagers. Abby's story challenges the stereotype that drug addicts are outcasts in society. Instead, it reveals that anyone, even an ordinary college student like Abby, can fall into addiction due to curiosity or stress. Through Charlie's perspective, readers witness how addiction ruins not only Abby's future, but also deeply affects her family. Abby's lies, theft, and relapse emphasize the destructive power of drugs and the harm they cause to relationships. Beyond addiction, the novel uses metaphors like hunting for frost flowers and catching wishing fish to illustrate different forms of dependency. Much like Abby's struggle with drugs, Charlie's dependence on the fish reflects the dangers of relying on external solutions for personal struggles. The story warns against blind reliance and calls for critical thinking to avoid falling into such traps. Messner doesn't craft a perfectly resolved ending, which reflects the harsh realities of addiction. Abby comes to terms with her continuous struggle while placing her hopes in Charlie's clean future. Meanwhile, Charlie lets go of her reliance on magic and embraces the wisdom she learned through her entire journey. The book leaves readers with a powerful message. True strength emerges not from wishes, but from resilience, self-awareness, and the consistent support of those we cherish. Okay, everybody, it's time to talk about our article for today. Again, the author of The Seventh Wish is Kate Messner. Okay, so Kate Messner's novel, The Seventh Wish, offers a profound exploration of the challenges of addiction and the complexities of dependency. So that's kind of the basic idea of this novel. It explores the challenges of addiction. Okay, this is something that young people might face as they're getting older, and more is expected of them to do well on tests and to make a lot of money and to buy expensive things, and their parents are expecting a lot from them. So yes, they might be tempted to get addicted to amphetamines or something like that. So yes, indeed, this book explores the challenges of addiction, and it also talks about dependency, which is when you're dependent on something, when you are addicted to something. And so these are the complexities of dependency. Yes, indeed, it's just not simple. It's not cut and dry.
I also wanted to mention this word profound is being used. It just means showing a lot of knowledge or insight, being very deep or intense. So it is very intense. It's a deep exploration of the challenges. And dependency, we usually use this word dependent more often. Dependency tends to only be focused on these addictions that we're going to be talking about briefly. But if you talk about someone who's dependent upon someone else, it means they rely on that person a lot. When we pay taxes in the U.S., our tax form will actually say how many dependents are in your household. How many people are relying on you and your income to live? That would refer to your kids or maybe an older in-law or a parent who isn't working but lives in your home and depends on you to take care of them. Those are dependents. But if you're dependent upon somebody, you depend on them. You rely on them. My mom depended on me to help take care of the younger kids in my family as we were growing up because there was a lot of work to do as a mom. So sometimes we're dependent on others, and sometimes others are dependent upon us. So she is drawing from her years as a middle school English teacher to write this novel. Kate Messner is her name, and she presents complex themes with clarity and empathy. This is one of her, I think, her characteristics or traits that is often commented on. When you read book reviews, they always say she really handles really difficult, complicated themes very clearly and with a lot of empathy, meaning she shows some sympathy and understanding towards the characters in her novels.
Right, so she was a middle school English teacher for many years, so she probably had some students who had problems like this as they're getting older and they have more pressure and they get addicted to drugs and things like that. And again, she knows about these things, so she can talk about these things with clarity, with clearness, and also with empathy. So, of course, she's not just talking about these kids as being just, statistics or whatever. She feels for them. She is sorry for them, and she wants them to do better. She wants them to improve their lives. So that's what empathy means. You feel the way other people do. It's similar in meaning to sympathy, but sympathy is a word which means you're kind of sorry for somebody, like you're sending somebody sympathy because they lost their pet dog or their grandfather died or whatever. That's sympathy, but here empathy is just feeling as other people feel.
Yeah, maybe Kate herself has experience with some of these issues. Sympathy, I always think of it as you're sort of removed from the situation. You don't know exactly how that person feels because you've never gone through it. Whereas empathy gives you the idea that you really understand because you have suffered in similar ways to the person that is needing your empathy. So after transitioning or changing from an English teacher to a full-time author, she continues to earn praise for engaging her young readers. Remember, they're sort of middle age or middle grade. What do you call that? Middle school?
Yep.
Middle school. We didn't use middle school. When I was growing up, we had elementary school, junior high and high school. But some states in the U.S., they use middle school, which is, I think, like 6th, 7th, 8th.
Well,
grade.
In my hometown, it was, let's see, what was it? Because they changed it after I was in 6th grade. I thought I was going to junior high, but then they changed it into a middle school. That was like grades 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay, so that's what we had. Yeah, but
school systems are all different in America. It depends on where you grow up. So, yeah, I wasn't used to saying middle school, but she obviously taught in a school that had 6th, 7th, 8th graders. And then they go on to high school, starting in the 9th grade. Well, she writes her novels mainly for that reader group, so 6th, 7th, 8th graders. So she engages or gets her young readers to get really involved with her books by coming up with these thought-provoking stories. If something's thought-provoking, it makes you think deeply about something. It really starts you thinking about life and how you might apply it to yourself or your situation. I think it's great to write these thought-provoking stories for young kids.
Right. To provoke just means to actually start something. So if you got in a fight with a classmate or something, the teacher might ask you, well, who started the fight? Who provoked you? Did they say something to you that caused you to hit them back or something like that? So they basically want to know who provoked the fight, who started it, who stimulated the fight. So again, these are thought-provoking stories. Stories that make you think about things instead of just enjoying them and forgetting about them. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, the seventh wish primarily explores the issue of drug use among teenagers. Okay, so I understand that this might be a problem here in Taiwan. Maybe not as much as in the USA, or at least in big cities in the USA. I don't believe it was a big problem where I'm from, a small town. You didn't really hear about people doing drugs and things like that. You heard about people smoking pot here and there, but for the most part, people weren't addicted. But I guess if you're in cities, it might be more of a problem.
Probably in big cities. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I wasn't around people who had this particular problem, but it's a serious one if you run into it. Abby's story, she's the older sister. Her story challenges the stereotype that drug addicts are outcasts in society. Yeah, these aren't the guys that nobody wants to hang around with or be in a clique. CLIQUE is clique, just means a group of friends, and they don't let other people into their little group because they're cool. Usually people think of drug addicts or the losers, right? The ones who get bad grades. They don't go to class very often. They cut class or skip class. But that wasn't true about Abby. She was very popular and she was a high achiever, meaning it was very important to her to get good grades and to do well. And she was probably pretty and popular. But she fell into the trap. I think what's really important here is to focus on who your friends are. If your friends are good people, they can help keep you safe during these really challenging years. But if you fall into the wrong crowd and you have some bad friends, sometimes this can happen to very popular people too.
Yep, so that's the stereotype. If you're addicted to drugs, you're an outcast, you're a loser, you're not going to amount to anything in the future, you're going to be homeless, you're going to work in a factory, you're going to be in the military if you're lucky. And so here it challenges that stereotype. No, of course, other people get addicted to drugs as well. Those high achievers can be addicted to drugs. And instead, it reveals that anyone, even an ordinary college student like Abby, can fall into addiction due to curiosity or stress. So yes, indeed, this can happen to high achievers. If you're an ordinary college student, maybe that's not a high achiever, but somebody who's still going to university, like Abby, yes, you might fall into addiction. You might get addicted to something because you are curious about that thing. If you're curious about something, you have curiosity for that thing. Or you might be under stress. You have a lot of pressure from your teachers, from your school, from your classmates, from your parents or whatever. Because of these reasons, you might get addicted to some kind of drug.
I wanted to mention you can be an addict to other things as well. You could be a sports addict, a shopping addict. There are lots of things that you can really be a big fan of and want to spend a lot of time doing. For example, video games. We have a lot of video game addicts out there who just want to play video games all the time. So there are other ways to be addicted besides just drugs. So moving on, it says through Charlie's perspective, readers witness how addiction ruins not only Abby's future, but also deeply affects her family. If you have a drug addict in your family, it affects the whole family. It's very hard on families. To ruin something just means to destroy something. It could be completely damaged, destroyed, suffer a lot of destruction. Here it just ruins or destroys her future, but it also affects her family. They have to spend so much more time trying to help Abby get control of her addiction.
Right. So, of course, addiction can ruin your life,
Yeah.
as making bad decisions in your life can ruin your life. If you've made bad investments in the stock market and you owe a bunch of money to people and you're working all your life to pay it back, maybe you ruined your life that way.
Maybe you're a gambling addict, huh?
Indeed, there are lots of ways to ruin things. So, yes, indeed, addiction can ruin not only your own future, in this case, Abby's future, the sister, but it also can deeply affect the family, Abby's family or Charlie's family. Of course, they are affected. Charlie is affected because if it wasn't for Abby's addiction, Charlie could have gone to that first Irish step dance competition. Okay, so now she has to adjust to that. And Abby's lies, theft, and relapse emphasize the destructive power of drugs and the harm they cause to relationships. So these are the reasons that Abby kind of ruined everybody else's lives, or at least affected them or changed them. It's because of her lies. Abby did not tell the truth. She lied to them. Also because of her theft, her stealing things. Remember, she stole Charlie's money to buy drugs. And then she had this relapse. That just means you go back to the bad habit you had before, especially if it involves drugs. Okay, it could also refer to a disease, like you might experience relapse if you had cancer before and the doctor said, oh, you're okay, you're cancer-free, but maybe 5 or 6 years later, you have a relapse. The cancer shows up again, so that means you're returning to the original or an earlier bad situation.
And all these things emphasize the destructive power of drugs. They're really destructive. Destructive just means something that completely destroys something else and causes a lot of harm or damage. And the harm they cause to relationships is sometimes irreparable. You can't repair it after the damage has been done. Right now, guys, we're going to take a quick break, listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back to finish this off.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们昨天跟前天带大家看了第7个愿望这个故事。那这第7个愿望的故事啊，我们今天就要看看它的作者是谁啊，然后他怎么会写这样子的故事呢？故事有什么样的主题呢？比如说在第一段的第一句，我们就看到作者 Kate Messner， 那他的小说啊，其实就是谈到很多我们大家成长的一些困难，比如说我们会依赖啦，然后有可能会对什么上瘾啦，然后有些人是毒瘾啦，有些人可能是手机成瘾啦，这样子的状况。这个作者这个 Kate Messner 呢，我们在第一段第2句看到他其实啊，他本来是一个这个中学老师啊，中学的英文老师。那他就吸取了多年的这种教学经验，那所以才能够写出一些充满同理心，这种很清楚但是又可以呈现复杂主题的小说。我们在第一段第2句突然又看到 drawing from 动词 ing 开头，然后句子好长哦，逗点之后才出现了 Messner presents blah blah blah， 所以我们合理的推断它又是一个分词构句。省略了什么呢？省略了应该是逗点中间本来有个 and 的连接词嘛，所以 Messner 这个主词本来应该有2个动词，第一个就是句首的 draw from， 第二个呢则是逗点之后的 present， 它呈现。所以我们刚刚说过了，这个我们提过了语言这种言简意赅啊，如果可以简化，如果可以少讲，如果一个字就可以说明一切，懒人原则，这就是最棒的一种语言表达。 所以分词构句大家一定要学会哦。那接着我们看到第一段第3句啊，有一个这个复合形容词。那因为他现在转为这个全职作家嘛，所以他一直有用这种发人深省的故事，然后来写作。最后面第一段第3句，我们把 thought-provoking 抓出来。我们说这个复合形容词呢，有一种其实就是关系子句的简化。如果今天这个 thought-provoking 是用来修饰 stories 故事的话，如果我们今天用句子变成是 stories which 或者是 that provoke our thoughts， 也就是会引发我们的想法，那干脆把关键2个字抓出来 thought-provoking， 这些故事本身主动就引发了我们的想法，一样是言简意赅的概念。好，那所以接下来我们看到了作者之后，就要谈谈他的主题咯。其实主题大概就是青少年的一些毒品使用啦，或者是依赖这样子。那当然 Abby 的故事就挑战了一些上瘾者啊、社会边缘人一些刻板印象。不过我们在第2段的第2句特别把这个印象抓出来 The stereotype， 后面的 that 到句尾请用中括号哦，中括号名词子句，给 that 一个符号叫做等号。这个 stereotype 这些刻板印象什么呢？等于其实就是 drug addicts blah 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 到句尾，你会发现句子完整，没有缺主词啊，也没有缺受词。这一段还有一个副词很重要，就是后面第3句的 instead。 注意啊， instead 不是文意相反哦，我们要把它翻成取而代之，或者是事实上点出一个精准的事实。好，点出什么精准的事实呢？其实啊，它显示出其实有没有？其实显示出，就像 Abby 她都有可能会任何的情况会上瘾的，所以 Abby 她因为吸毒有毒瘾的关系，她的谎言啊、偷窃啊，其实就是凸显了整个毒品的破坏力跟对人际之间造成的伤害。第2段后面第5句的地方，我们把最后面的 the harm 先画起来，它是先行词哦。they 到句尾的地方，它是关系词，会取或带的省略的关系子句。那我们特别讲一下，会取或带的什么时候可以省略不写呢？也就是会取或带的在后面括号关系子句当中本身当受词。我们看一下括号 They cause what？ 毒品造成了什么？什么就是伤害 the harm。 所以会取代的代替的 the harm 在括号里面当成 cause 的受词，那么关代 which that 就可以省略不写。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. This is day 3, which usually means we are discussing the themes of the book and the author herself, Kate Mesner, some of the ideas that she wanted to communicate through her writing, through her fiction. We found out that she actually started her career as a middle school English teacher, teaching kids that were anywhere from the 6th grade to the 7th grade, 8th grade, in that area. And then she moved on to be a full-time author. It's not easy to get any sort of writing that you do published. So I'm sure she was probably writing her books as she was teaching English as a school teacher at the same time.
That's kind of what J.K. Rowling did. I guess
Yep.
She was teaching English in Portugal and she was writing on the side, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So sometimes you get lucky and a publishing company will accept your manuscript and publish it, and people can read what you write and you can become famous like Kate Mesner. But you know what? These days you can self-publish. You don't need to go to some of these big publishing companies. You can self-publish and put your stuff out there and see if people really like it or whether they don't. But if you have that urge, follow up on it, see where it takes you. I love writers. I think that's kind of a really cool profession or career to pursue or chase.
Okay, so here in the next paragraph it says, beyond addiction, or in addition to talking about addiction, the novel uses metaphors like hunting for frost flowers and catching wishing fish to illustrate different forms of dependency. So if you use a metaphor, you're using a word or a phrase to apply to something that logically doesn't make sense. You can't really say, oh, there's a mountain of people over there. There isn't really a mountain of people stacked up really high.
No.
It's just used for emphasis as a way of describing something, so that would be a metaphor. And yes, we're talking about hunting for frost flowers. I guess there aren't really frost flowers out there, or you might catch a wishing fish, and that will illustrate different forms of dependency, like depending on a magical creature to make wishes to.
Yeah. One of my favorite metaphors is my brother's a pig. Which means your brother is really messy. He's not really a pig, but you're trying to describe something or someone as having characteristics that aren't human-like, I would say.
Or you're an angel or something like that.
Yeah.
Etc. Those are all metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, indeed, this is using those metaphors to talk about addiction, using those frost flowers and that wishing fish. Now, much like Abby's struggle with drugs, Charlie's dependence on the fish reflects the dangers of relying on external solutions for personal struggles. So yes, indeed, Abby has this struggle with drugs. She needs help from the outside. She probably can't give up the drugs by herself. And Charlie is also dependent on the fish. So these things that you're dependent on reflects the dangers of relying on those external solutions. If something's external, it's outside of yourself. So maybe you have some problems in your life, but you try to look for answers outside of yourself instead of looking in the mirror and realizing, no, I'm the only one who can solve this problem. I can't depend on other people or on my imaginary friends.
Yeah, so Charlie actually depends on this talking fish, which is crazy, instead of relying on her internal solutions, things and ideas that she comes up with on her own to conquer some of her personal struggles. The story warns against blind reliance and calls for critical thinking to avoid falling into such traps. Blind reliance. If you rely on someone, you depend on them. But if it's blind, it means you just give all your loyalty and trust to somebody without actually thinking about it more clearly. That's a dangerous thing to do. Unless you know that person very well. I kind of have blind reliance on my parents because I trust them. I think they give me great advice. But yeah, it's always good to really do some critical thinking, think deeply about what's going on in your life, and never give blind reliance to friends. Because sometimes our friends don't always give us good advice.
Sometimes they don't, and here's the final paragraph. It says, Messner doesn't craft a perfectly resolved ending, which reflects the harsh realities of addiction. So she doesn't give us a happy ending. It's kind of up in the air. Abby comes to terms with her continuous struggle while placing her hopes in Charlie's clean future. So she has accepted her continuous struggle. She's going to struggle with addiction for the rest of her life. And also, she hopes that Charlie has a clean future, that this won't happen to Charlie herself, that she'll be a successful Irish step dancer in the future or whatever. And meanwhile, Charlie lets go of her reliance on magic and embraces the wisdom she learned through her entire journey. So at first, I guess she was addicted to the fish and the fish's wishes, but later she realizes, no, destiny is in my own hands. I control my future, and I shouldn't depend on a magical being to help me make it through a difficult time.
Well, the book leaves readers with a powerful message. True strength emerges not from wishes, but from resilience. Bouncing back after something bad happens to you is resilience. Being resilient is the adjective form. Self-awareness, understanding how your behavior affects other people and vice versa, and the consistent support of those we cherish. If you're consistent, you're unchanging. You're somebody that someone can rely on. You're dependable because you don't change all the time on them. So all these things are pretty important. I think there's some great lessons to be learned in this particular novel.
And that brings us to the end of our great lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
所以我们刚刚谈到毒瘾啊，这个毒瘾除了毒瘾之外，其实小说这个还用了一些隐喻啦，比如说怎么会有鱼是可以这个讲话呢？其实这个隐喻啊，它就是一种所谓的依赖。好，我们在第3段呢， 要特别注意几个单词，比如说在第一句当中的 metaphor 的隐喻就是像是不说出来的哦，它是一朵花，它像是一朵花，只要像不说出来它是一朵花，这就是隐喻的手法哦。它像是一朵花，有出现像 like 这种字眼，那叫做 simile， 就是所谓的名喻。好，那当然这个 metaphor 我们谈到的像是这个 talking fish、wishing fish， 它指的是什么呢？它指的就是第二句话当中，例如说 external solution， 外部的一些解决方案，或第三句的 blind reliance， 一些盲目的依赖依靠，这就是 wishing fish 在整个故事当中是这样的意思。对，有时候我们的确就依赖别人啊，依赖什么东西啊，依赖这个依赖是不行的，我们长大就是要学着独立的。所以最后面当然这个作者呢，他并没有设计一个很完美的结局，因为不可能什么事情都会像我们小时候读的这个 fairy tales 一样哦， they live ever 这个 happily ever after， 就是什么都是王子公主啊，最后快乐的过生活。那这是什么样的意义呢？其实就反映出了毒瘾这种残酷的现实。所以最后面在第四段啊，第一句的地方我们抓出来，它是一个补充说明的一个关系子句，逗点前面的先行词是 a perfectly resolved ending， 很完美的结局， which 就代替它补充说明的关系子句。那当然呢，同时啊，我们看到这个 Charlie 因为放弃了对魔法的依赖，他也学到自己要有韧性，自己要能够自我察觉，这是最重要的。可是我们在第四段呢，最后一句这个地方，我们把第三句的地方，第三句抓出来，它呢刚好有一个关系词简化的关系子句。我们看一下，先行词是 the wisdom， 后面的续到句尾左右括号，省略的是 which 或者是 that， 就像我们刚刚在休息之前谈到第二段第五句同样的结构。所以在这边呢，希望大家也可以跟 Charlie 一样学会 resilience、self-awareness， 还有得到朋友的支持。那以上是我们今天的内容，我是 Anna， 我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we certainly encourage you to read this month's featured novel, The Seventh Wish. You might enjoy it, and of course, it will help you improve your English ability. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
And I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.